There is something in the Appalachian Mountains that people do not like to name. Not out loud, not after dark. Because in some towns, hidden between the ridges and the trees, there are stories about a presence that does not walk like an animal and does not speak like a human. But sometimes it tries. And those who hear it say the most terrifying part is not what it looks like. It is the moment. It sounds like someone you know. The Appalachian Mountains have always carried a certain kind of silence, not the soft silence of peace. Something older than that. A silence that feels watchful. A silence that settles over narrow roads, rotting porches, forgotten graveyards, and forests so deep they seem to swallow moonlight whole. In daylight, the mountains can look beautiful. Endless ridgelines, dark pines, thin fog drifting low across the valleys. But when night falls, the land changes. The roads grow emptier, the woods grow wider, and every sound begins to feel like a warning. For generations, people in the mountains have passed down stories they rarely tell outsiders. Stories about voices in the trees, about things seen moving on all fours, only to rise moments later onto two legs. About creatures that wait beyond the tree line, studying houses with a patience that feels almost human. Some call it a spirit. Some call it a witch. Some refuse to call it anything at all. But in whispered conversations, in the hush that comes after midnight, one name returns again and again: the Appalachian Skinwalker. Now, that name is complicated. The deeper history of Skinwalker stories belongs elsewhere, to older beliefs, older warnings, older lands. But across Appalachia, something changed over time. The mountains shaped the fear into their own image, and what remained was a local legend, darker, vaguer, and somehow more unsettling. Not a single creature with one clear face, but a thing of many shapes, a thing that borrows, a thing that mimics, a thing that waits for you to make one mistake. In the mountain towns of eastern Kentucky, southern West Virginia, western North Carolina, and deep parts of Tennessee, there are families who still teach the same rule to their children. If you hear something calling your name from the woods at night, do not answer. If you hear knocking on the window and no one is there, do not look too long. And if you see an animal standing where no animal should stand, staring at the house as though it understands what a house is, lock the door, then wait for morning. Because whatever is outside may not be lost. It may be listening. One version of the legend begins with the old roads. Those thin, winding Appalachian roads that cut through forest and hollow, passing abandoned churches, collapsed barns, and family cemeteries fenced in rusted iron. Drivers say there are stretches where the forest grows too close to the asphalt. Places where the branches seem to lean inward, as though the mountain itself is closing around you. And on those roads, people sometimes see it. Not clearly. Never clearly. A shape standing near the shoulder. Too tall to be a coyote. Too thin to be a bear. Too still to be any living creature at all. When headlights sweep across it, it does not run. It only turns. Slowly, as if surprised you noticed. Then there are the eyes. People remember the eyes more than anything else, not because they glow, but because they seem aware. Cold, unblinking, almost curious. There's a story told in a small mountain town near the Virginia border about two brothers driving home after a late shift one November night. The road was empty, the kind of empty that makes your own engine sound too loud. As they came around a bend, they saw what looked like a deer standing at the edge of the woods. But something was wrong. Its body seemed twisted, its legs too long, its head tilted at an angle no living deer should hold. The younger brother laughed at first. Nervous laughter. Then the thing stepped forward into the road, and it stood up, not all the way, just enough. Enough for them to see its front limbs bend strangely, as though it were remembering how to move, like something else. The older brother hit the gas. Neither of them spoke for almost 10 minutes. Then, from the back seat, they heard a voice, soft, dry, almost playful. "Why did you leave me out there?" When they reached home, the back seat was empty. But the younger brother would later swear there was mud on the upholstery and a smell in the car that lasted for days. Wet earth, rotting leaves, something animal, or almost animal. That is what makes this legend so difficult to shake. The Appalachian Skinwalker is never described the same way twice. Sometimes it is seen as a pale figure moving between the trees, sometimes as a dog too large to be natural, sometimes as a woman in white standing at the edge of a cemetery, until someone looks away and looks back and sees that she is no woman at all. In some stories, it appears on rooftops. In others, it circles houses without making a sound. And then there are the voices. That is the part people fear most. Not the face, not the shape. The voice. Hunters tell stories of hearing someone call to them deep in the woods, using the exact voice of a friend walking ahead on the trail. A mother hears her child calling from the tree line, even though the child is asleep upstairs. A man hears his dead brother whisper from the darkness outside the barn. Always familiar, always wrong. The voice knows enough to draw you closer, but never enough to sound truly human. There's always something missing, a rhythm, a warmth, a soul. One old account from western North Carolina tells of a widow living alone in a weathered farmhouse at the base of a ridge. Her nearest neighbor was half a mile away. Her husband had died years before, and by all accounts, she was a practical woman, not easily frightened. One winter evening, just after dusk, she heard footsteps circling the house. Slowly, crunching through frost, she checked the windows. Nothing. The footsteps stopped near the kitchen wall. Then came 3 knocks. Not loud, measured, patient. She did not open the door. A few moments later, from the other side of the glass, she heard her husband's voice, gentle, tired, exactly as she remembered it. "Mary, let me in." For one terrible second, she believed it. Then the voice spoke again, this time too quickly, too empty. "Mary, you know me. Open the door." She backed away, and from outside, something dragged its nails down the wood, long, slow, deliberate. The next morning, her porch was covered in tracks she could not explain. They began like hoof prints in the frost, then changed halfway across the yard into something that looked disturbingly like human feet. Bare human feet leading into the woods and nowhere else. Stories like that spread because the mountains are the perfect place for them. Appalachia keeps its secret. Mist rolls in fast. Roads disappear into hollows. Old names cling to ruined places. And every family seems to know of one patch of forest where nothing feels right. A church lot where dogs refuse to enter. A creek bed where voices echo when no one's there. A ridge where birds stop singing all at once. In daylight, those details sound small. At night, they become something else. Some say the creature is drawn to grief. Others say it watches families for days before revealing itself. A few believe it cannot enter a home unless invited, which is why it imitates voices, why it knocks, why it tries to sound wounded, lost, or familiar. But there is another version of the legend, a darker one. According to that telling, the Appalachian Skinwalker is not one being. It is a role, a transformation, a person who stepped too far into forbidden rituals, old mountain magic twisted by cruelty, until there was almost nothing human left, only hunger, imitation, and the need to wear another shape. In isolated communities, people once whispered about reclusive figures living beyond the last occupied houses. Men or women seen gathering animal bones, hanging strange bundles from trees, painting symbols over doors with soot and blood. Most of those stories have faded, but not all. Because now and then, someone vanishes in the mountains. A hunter, a drifter, a child who wandered from camp. And sometimes, what returns is not the person who left. At least, that is what the old stories say. One of the most unsettling accounts comes from a group of teenagers who camped near an abandoned fire road in eastern Tennessee. It was the kind of place young people go because they have heard rumors. And because rumors feel harmless in daylight, they built a fire, they laughed, told ghost stories, waited for something spooky to happen. For hours, nothing did. Then one of them heard footsteps moving in the dark beyond the camp. Not approaching, circling. They called out, thinking it was another camper. No answer. A few minutes later, from deep in the trees, they heard one of their own voices reply. The exact voice of the boy standing beside the fire. "I'm over here." The group froze, because the real boy had not spoken. Again the voice came. Closer now. "I'm over here." Same tone, same accent, same voice, but stretched somehow, like a recording played back wrong. Then the woods went silent. No crickets, no wind, no movement. One of the girls began to cry, and that was when they saw it. At the edge of the firelight, a tall shape crouched between two trees. Its body seemed folded in ways that did not make sense. Its head was low, its shoulders were too narrow, and its eyes fixed on them without blinking. No one moved, no one breathed. Then the thing smiled, not with joy, not even with malice, with recognition, as though it had finally been seen. The group ran. They left tents, bags, phones, everything behind. The next morning, when adults returned with them to collect their belongings, they found the campsite torn apart. Coolers overturned, blankets dragged into the mud, and around the fire pit, a ring of prints, some canine, some human, all of them circling inward. So what is the Appalachian Skinwalker? A creature? A curse? A borrowed fear given new life in the oldest mountains in America? No one can say for certain, and maybe that is why the legend endures. Because it never settles into one shape. It remains half seen, half heard. A thing made of fragments, a voice in the woods, a figure on the road, a knock at the door after midnight. Tracks that begin as one animal and end as something else entirely. In Appalachia, people still leave porch lights on longer than necessary. They still pull children inside before dark. And some still avoid speaking certain stories above a whisper, especially when the windows are open and the forest is near. Because the old belief has never really disappeared. If something out there learns your voice, if something out there speaks with a mouth of memory, then the danger is not that you will see it. The danger is that you will trust it. and deep in the Appalachian Mountains, where the fog gathers thick between the trees, where abandoned churches rot beside forgotten roads, where the wind sometimes sounds almost like words. Some people say it is still waiting, listening, practicing. And to this day, if a voice calls your name from the darkness beyond the porch light, most mountain people will tell you the same thing. Do not answer. Because the thing in the woods may not be trying to find you. It may be trying to become you.